Okay, let's get going today, and we'll see who else joins. All right, so let's start today. We'll look at our do now first, and I may be challenging the computer to do too many things at once, but let's see what we can do. All right, so today's the 24th. We'll click on today's do now. All right, and let's start by putting your name, click fourth period, hit next. And like always, when we look at our work, we always want to be referring back to what we learned in marking period 3, where we talked about the different rules of composition. So the first one, remember, rule of thirds is going to be where your grid shows up in your picture, like when you're taking it on your phone. And you want to try to make sure that you align things with those lines, or maybe where the lines cross in that grid. Make sure that things are balanced with balancing elements. Make sure you have some interesting leading lines. Remember, leading lines, your eye kind of follows the line in the picture and kind of draws you to look at something else. We've talked about symmetry and patterns. Remember, patterns are anything that repeats, and symmetry means it's balanced. We've talked about framing, where you can kind of zoom into something by blocking off background areas, and depth and background, where things are kind of overlaying, and think about the role that the background plays when you're taking a picture, which is going to be something we talk about today too. And the other thing we wanted to talk about in the past was viewpoint. So different angles of your phone, like, so how can you look down or look at a high angle up to get a really interesting shot, and how we can use these different rules of composition in making our photography better overall for the class. So our theme this week that we're going to be talking about is sports and action photography. So we have some sports photos here. The top one looks like maybe sunset, and I think that he's catching perhaps a football. It's hard to tell. It looks kind of like a football to me. And then the second one, the second image, we have some action kind of happening on the field. And there's almost like a little bit of a vibration happening visually with the amount of blur that's around that's those central figures in the middle. So let's look at some of the rules that may stand out with these two images. So do you think image 1 is an example of framing, lighting, cropping, blurring, leading lines, or symmetry? And look at those same ones that apply to the second photograph, and just do your best guess on which one you think stands out the most. Okay? And when you're done with your do now, remember, as always, to come back to Google Classroom and make sure you hit the turn in button here. Okay, so I'll give everybody a minute to do that, and then we'll go through our content for this week. All right, let's give this a second to load. All right, so we're focusing this week on sports and action photography. We want to be able to identify a sports or action photograph, be able to try different types of sports or action photography, and use those 9 rules of composition in the sports or action photograph. Okay, so that whatever you're figuring out, however you want to lay out or crop or adjust something, keep in mind those 9 rules of composition that we just referred to again in our do now. Okay, so what is sports photography? It's basically capturing anything, could be sport related, game related, exercises, any outdoor activities. It's a really broad term that relates to anything having to do with sports. Okay, so in any capacity. here are some examples, but obviously these are not all of the sports that there are. So there's a ton more that are just not on here. But basketball shots, soccer, fitness, track, any sort of movement would work for this physical movement, right? Related to fitness or any sports stuff that you may see. The second part of this week is perhaps you may not be able to find an example of sports photography. You may not be able to set up something like that, but you could possibly do something that's action photography. So, action photography is capturing anything that's moving, any moving subject. And remember, when we say the word subject, we're talking about what are we taking a picture of. So, whatever is that main focal point in the picture. So, this could be a person, an animal, or even a car, something that's moving that can show action. So you could have somebody showing action by actually jumping. You could have like a dog. You can see the example right down here with a dog jumping, right? You could show moving water. So the action or the movement that's happening is the water is moving. So you can see in this fountain, or even just like in your sink, if you try to capture like the water kind of coming out of the faucet, that's an easy thing that anybody could do at home. Birds, if you could capture any sort of movement or action with a bird, or even things like cars, bicycles, motorcycles, right? Anything that could move. The tricky thing is that in our photographs, we don't necessarily see them moving because it's not a video, right? But we'll kind of capture that moment where they're either off the ground or it's implied that they're moving. So you can kind of blur things, you can play around with the backgrounds and adjust things, but we'll talk more about that in a minute. So, how to get the best photos when it comes to sports photography and action photography in general. Burst mode is a really helpful tool. I put a video for either iPhones or Androids in here to kind of show you how to do burst mode. You could take a whole bunch of pictures at once, and then you can look at your pictures, analyze which one are the best ones from all those that you took, like which one shows the best action or which one has the best like composition, the most interesting layout, and then delete the rest of them. But you can just hold down, like when you're going to take a picture, and you can just take multiple at a time. And I've seen some people figure this out by accident in the past. So maybe you know how to do it and you like didn't understand when to use it. This is the perfect time to use that. And I'm going to try to skip through these. Hopefully, so you can watch the videos on your own, but I just want to make sure that you know that they're there. So anything that's live action shot, try different angles, move around to get either closer to the ground or the court to get some different shots. So if you look at this shot here, you can see this person is probably sitting on the grass because they're almost like looking up at this person about to catch the football. So think about where you could sit that you could get a more interesting angle. Maybe you're up in a stand and you could kind of look down at somebody, or maybe like like your friends are playing basketball outside of your apartment building. You can look down from the third floor and see them playing basketball. It could be an interesting shot. So think about some different angles to capture that action. Sometimes, and you don't know what your week looks like. Maybe you don't know if you're going to be able to attend a sporting event or a game, or you don't know if you're going to be able to, set something up like where somebody's going to be practicing and you can go see them. Maybe you need to set up something, on your own. So think about the photograph, kind of think ahead for this week. When or what could you photograph? What's a good time? Maybe you have to ask a family member or a friend. You can set up your own like shot to try to do your own action, but it's kind of tricky. I think it's much easier to ask somebody who's a family member or a friend, hey, would you mind just, shooting some hoops and I'll take some pictures as you're shooting the ball. You know what I mean? You don't necessarily even have to get people's face in the picture. You can kind of take a picture from them behind, and it's still an interesting shot. It could be something simple like, you go to your young cousin's game, you can take a picture there, or maybe you have like your sister like just jumping in the backyard or around where you live, and you take some pictures of that. So you might have to like think about the lighting that's there and kind of plan out how you're going to set up the stage to take some photos on your own. But it could be something that takes a little bit of planning more so than other ones. Like in the past where we had, portrait, maybe you find anybody take a picture of their face. Landscape and nature, you can take that anytime, any place, anything that's nature related was easy. This one may take a little bit of planning ahead of time to just make sure that you can actually get some shots that fall under this category. I'm skipping past the video there. This is a really good video because this person is actually a sports photographer, and he's seen portfolios from people who are trying to go into photography, and what he sees as common flaws or errors and things that we can kind of try to avoid in our own photographs. We don't have to be using like high-end equipment. We're just using our phones to capture these things, but the same tips and tricks really apply to us as well. So try not to have too busy of a background. We've talked about this before where it has like visual noise, too many things like moving around in the background, or just too many distractions that you can't focus on your subject. So try to angle your phone, right? If you're taking a picture of somebody and there's people in the stands behind them, or there's just like a lot of like distractions behind it, maybe angle your phone looking up so that you can see more of the sky and it's a cleaner background. Another thing when you're going towards the end to do your editing, don't crop off arms and legs. Don't chop off fingers, right? Keep an eye out so that you're not making this person look like they're missing limbs, okay? Look at keeping the horizon straight. So we're taking all kinds of angled shots in different like directions, but at the end, it's very easy when you're going in to edit your photos just to shift your photo so that the horizon line is actually straight across. And the other thing to think about is it doesn't have to be a picture of somebody on a field or, on the court or something. It could be anything that relates to the sporting event could show part of the sports story, right? It could be somebody in the bleachers, everybody cheering somebody on. It could be the coach yelling to people on the field, right? So all of those things are part of the story that sports can tell. So think about all of those things as they are part of, sports in general. Now, something you may have to think about if you're going to take a picture inside. So say you want to have your little brother doing some jumping jacks. You're going to take some pictures of him as he's doing this. Maybe the lighting isn't so good and you might get some blurs. Now, you can intentionally use blur as a possibility to show movement. But if you're trying to get a really sharp image, you may need to move to an area where there's more light. So sometimes that's outside because inside we have, different types of lighting and it may not be the best. You could always try to use flash. So say you want to take a picture of, water coming out of your faucet and you want to catch that moving water in the shot. If there's not enough light around you, the phone may have a hard time picking that up. So you may want to try to go outside and maybe like pour water out of a water bottle and do the same look, the same like concept, but in a different area just so you have more light. Again, you can always try using your flash too to help you. There's a video there that basically explains that same thing. We talked about telling a story. Think about all of the components around you that help kind of make that impactful image. And at the end, like always, don't forget to do the editing, okay? So look at your pictures, crop it. If it's got a busy background that's not helping it, crop it out. One of the things we noticed last week with architectural photography or pictures of buildings, many of them took out the color and changed it to black and white because they wanted you to see the lines of the building. They really wanted the geometry to stand out. But in sports photography and most of action photography, they usually keep the color in there. I mean, think about like a sports team. In order for you to recognize a team, you kind of need to know the colors that the players are wearing, right? So color becomes an important component of a sports photograph. So for this week, I don't think, unless it's a really extreme one with lighting, I don't think I would remove any of the color. I would boost the colors up. So as you're editing, try to go and adjust the contrast, make sure the lights and darks really stand out, but then also maybe touch up the colors a little bit, like make them brighter or more vivid so they stand out, because you want to be able to see that team or see the colors and really feel the energy of the environment. Okay, so it's a fine line, kind of. We don't want it too busy that we can't see the subject, but we do want to show that there's action and movement happening there. All right. All right, so every week we have the same thing, an inspiration sheet, and then we're going to take pictures. In this, for this week, you're going to be taking probably more than you usually take if you're using the burst photography, or the burst mode on your phone. to take as many pictures as possible, and then go through and edit. 5 images. I've had people turn in more than 5. If you've got more than 5 great ones, turn them in. That's fine. I'll give you full credit. It's interesting to see some of the shots that people have. Now, keep in mind, you may have went to your brother's baseball game, last weekend, and maybe you have already some pictures that fit under this category. But the pictures have to be ones that you took. Okay, so if you already took these photos or something similar concept on your phone, you're welcome to use those. Okay, but if you don't have anything that really fits under this idea or this topic, then go out and kind of plan how you can take something that either shows sports or action, any movement at all. Remember, every week we have an inspiration sheet, so you're just going to make a Google Doc, come up with 3 ideas you want to do, and again, you might start already having an idea of what you want to do, knowing what the topic is this week. So you know that your cousin's going to be practicing, baseball with, his friends, or maybe your friends are going to go play basketball down the street. They usually go on, Tuesday night, whatever. You can go down there and take some pictures. So you may already have in your mind what you want to do for this project. So just kind of use your inspiration sheet to kind of reflect that. So take a picture, try a picture on Google that shows somebody, shooting some hoops, and then say, my first idea is to take pictures of my friends playing basketball when they go to do this. You know what I mean? So go through and try to do some planning and get your inspiration sheet done with 3 ideas. Make sure you write down what you're doing too. Don't just put a picture there. Actually write, I'm going to do this for my first picture. I'm going to do this for my other pictures. My third idea is to do this. So write that out so I can give you 100. Because if you just put pictures and you don't write a little bit, I can't give you the full credit because you didn't complete the whole assignment. Okay, so if that's you, make sure you write out what you're actually going to be doing when you plan out what you want to do for your inspiration sheet. Okay, and then you're going to actually go out and take your pictures. All right, anybody have any questions about our idea or a topic for this week? Come back to you guys. Any ideas, questions, concerns, issues?
No.
Good, okay. So up to this point so far, we've done portrait, landscape, still life, macro, and architectural, I think. So if you're behind on any of the photos, you don't want to wait till the end of the school year. I think our last day is June 16th. So you want to make sure that you get your photos turned in before then. You don't want to be panicking the last week to try to get everything turned in. So take a few minutes out, go through your phone, look at the pictures that you've taken, and see if you can turn in something from something you've already taken pictures of. Okay, as long as you took the pictures, they still work as an assignment that you can turn in. Okay, the inspiration sheets are a class work grade, so they're less points. The photo shoots are more points. So if you don't have all your inspiration sheets, you may be okay, but if you are missing photo shoots, it probably is going to affect your grade. Okay, I'm probably going to be going through the end of this week to update grades. So if you turned in anything since the last time I went through and graded, just know to look out by the end of this week that I'll be updating everything. Okay, so if you guys don't have any questions, why don't you go ahead and start working on your inspiration sheet and planning out what you want to do for the week. I will still be on the call, so if you have an issue, you can always hop back on and let me know or reach out to me, okay? But I'll be here, but you guys don't have to stay unless you want to. All right? Okay, guys.
Bye, miss.
See you later.
Bye.
Bye.